What's up, heathens? Sorry, I accidentally went ahead and switched to me and like it all fucked up and everything like that. So, anyways, what's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Tonight we have, I believe he's a Christian. I'm not exactly sure. Honestly, I couldn't stomach the entire video, before I was like, this is a video I can do. So we're going to take a look and see what he's talking about. But apparently this guy claims that atheism isn't science. And of course, whenever I read that title initially, I was like, okay, yeah, it's not science, because it's just the answer to one question, and that's whether or not you believe a God to exist. So we're going to find out what in the fuck he's talking about today. If you want to know more about how atheism isn't science and why that doesn't really matter at all, then please stay tuned. But first we have... Today I learned. Alright, I've got to fix my settings on all these videos. They got to stop playing and like disappear whenever they're done playing. Anyways, alright, so first up on Today I learned that during the Black Death, incoming ships, which they leave this out, but it's incoming ships coming into Ragus or something like that, Italy, during the 14th century, they were forced to wait for 40 days to prevent possible infection. The Italian word for 40 is quaranta, which is where you get the word quarantine. And when I first saw this, I was like, is it really? I don't know if this is true. This sounds like one of those, mind-blazing top 10 facts things that aren't really facts, right? So I looked it up, and it's true. This is how we get the English word quarantine, because during the 14th century, during the Black Death, this particular Italian city would make ships wait in these other areas for at least a month. It would range between like either shorter or longer depending on their situation. Most of the time they would require a 40-day stay before they actually imported anything into the city. That's because they were smart enough to know to fucking social distance. This is shit that we knew back in the 14th century, but you motherfuckers are out here protesting like you're dumber than a peasant. I know, they just piss me off. Anyways, look it up. It's a real fact. So that's where we get the word quarantine, because we've known about quarantine for a while. Next on Today I learned that alcohol's measurement is coined proof because during the 1500s, England would increase taxes on drinks containing a higher percentage of alcohol. They would measure this by soaking gunpowder in the alcohol and trying to ignite it. If it ignited, this was proof that it had high enough content. So that's where you get the proofs. I still don't know like what the proof, how that relates to percentage of alcohol. I'm not exactly sure how that correlates, but I'm sure the Daily Meal there has it. I should have read it in order to know what in the fuck it's talking about. But y'all go and look that up, I guess, if you want to know more. And then finally on Today I learned that the phrase, "Beam me up, Scotty," has never appeared in a single episode of Star Trek.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that, no. And since you guys love to make me say shit like Star Trek is better than Star Wars, then I felt like I have enough reason to like throw a little bit of shit on Star Trek. Or
it's not a Star Trek problem.
No,
it's a dumbass public problem.
See, dumbass public, dumbass Star Trek fandom problem.
No. The real Star Trek fans know it.
The real Star Trek fans know it. Okay. Anyways, that's it for the Today I Learned, but we do have... a second. You know what's next, hon?
Oh, the out of context comics?
Mm-hmm. Out of context comics! We're not gonna know what the fuck is going on. So today it's Super Maria. It's not really a comic, but it is a meme. So still, out of I don't even know how I'm supposed to take this. It's Mary with a mustache on top of a question block. This is just weird.
It is weird.
It's the closest that I could come to a comic that's out of context comic this week. So, crucify me all you want to. Ha! Pun. Anyways. Y'all know what time it is now?
Shitty ass science?
Shitty ass science! We're gonna answer some science shit really wrong. Shitty ass science! We're gonna answer some science. Woo! What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today's question is, where do atheists base their morality? Where do atheists base their morality? I don't know. It's definitely not in a fucking grammar book for you there, bud. Anyways, so where do atheists base their morality? Anytime that we have a moral question that we are confused on, that we being the atheists, I'm not an atheist. Obviously, I'm a good Christian boy. I suck that Jesus dick all the time. But atheists out there, what they do is they sacrifice a cat. They do it on an altar to Baal, and they have to cut it in a certain way, and then Baal will tell them exactly which moral choice to make. If you ever have a question as to whether or not your coworker is an atheist, just look for their altar where they sacrifice small animals. They all do this because they all can't think for themselves and come up with their own morality. They have to ask some supernatural deity in order to know what is right and wrong, and so they sacrifice small animals to Baal. That's exact, or to his balls. I can't remember which one it is. It's either Baal or balls. It might be balls. If they have a little sacrificing stand with nuts, like truck nuts hanging off the top of them, it's the balls god. But if it is just a normal sacrificial like table, where you saw up the cats, then it is Baal. Okay? So that's how they, not we, they get their morality. They got to ask Baal to tell them what to do. All right? Now, if that sounds stupid to you, that's exactly how stupid atheists are. Okay? They have to ask some supernatural deity in order to know what's right and wrong. Of course, we know it because our supernatural deity, being Christians, wrote it on our hearts, so we immediately know what is right or wrong. We don't have to consult God, but sometimes we do get confused, so maybe we should consult this supernatural deity to tell us what is right and wrong. I ran out of steam a little ways through it. Anyways, Baal, balls. There's any number of gods they could be sacrificing to. Anyways, thank you there, God's judgment is inevitable. I appreciate your question. I will see y'all later before I embarrass myself more than Trump does. Anyways. Oh yeah. Bye! All right. So, to seriously answer this question, atheists, we would not look to any kind of supernatural deity in order to know what's right and wrong or what's moral and immoral. We have our own moral foundations. We make up our own minds as to what is moral and immoral. Now, that does make it sort of opinionated as to what is moral and immoral. But because we live in a society, we have these common moral foundations that people share within a society. So it seems like we all have this notion that, like, yeah, I shouldn't wouldn't go out and just kill random people, right? That's immoral. And there's plenty of other things I could list here that would be immoral as we understand it. But just because we consider it in our society immoral doesn't mean that it's necessarily immoral in another society. And you can take less serious offenses and you can see how this transfers across cultures, how what we consider to be moral is immoral in another country, and vice versa. So that's where we would get our morals from. We develop them on our own. While they are opinions, basically, we all agree to a certain set of morals in order to live in the society that we live in. So there you go. Quick and dirty answer to the morality question for atheists. Anyways, y'all ready to get to tonight's response video? Casey's like, can't wait. Drew's book review says, we didn't make you say it that time. Yeah, I know. All right. Let's get on with it, shall we?
Mrs. Johnson has mistaken her materialistic philosophy for science. She has conflated atheism with science. Atheists have often said to me that if it were not for science, they would not have a mobile phone, a radio, or a television, and there would be no vaccines for deadly diseases. Am I missing something? How does the materialistic faith-based assumption, this smuggled-in philosophical position that only natural things exist, have any bearing on how one does their science?
I'm so glad you asked this question. I'm also glad that Quentin Van Boeven, he asked the question too. What are you drinking tonight, GE? This is called Monster Purple. It's a weird taste, but, you know, I don't know. This is what I got to drink tonight. Apparently, I've been drinking too much while on quarantine. Technically, we're not quarantined, but whatever. All right. So the question is that he asked is, what does the material world or materialism have to do with science, or there primarily being a material world? And I think that this is a very good question to ask because it's good for us to delineate why, if theism is true, science should technically be impossible to do. So let's start with theism, shall we? So theism, or the idea that the supernatural exists, has the basis for supernatural things is that it disrupts the natural order of reality in order for something to happen. So it's something that doesn't normally happen. It's above nature. It's outside of this reality that this stuff happens, and it sort of disrupts the natural order of things. Now, on to science. Science relies on this natural order to happen. Science relies on uniformitarianism, being that, you know, things operate in the past as they will operate now in the present and how they will operate in the future. This is the basis for all the predictions that happen on science. If the supernatural were a real thing, technically it would be impossible to do science effectively. That doesn't mean that one can't develop the same scientific concepts, do the science, and come up with the same things, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to depend on the natural order of reality to operate in the same way every time. Let's just take one of the things that he brought up here, and that's like the cell phone. Now, if electrons didn't move in a certain way, didn't interact with other materials in a certain way, then there's no way that we could effectively design a cell phone to work, because we couldn't count on those electrons moving and interacting in the exact same way every time, or at least in predictable ways. When you introduce an element of the unknown, or the element of the natural order of reality breaking for whatever reason and disrupting it and causing weird stuff to happen, then you wouldn't be able to really count on electrons or anything else for that nature in reality to continue to operate in predictable ways. So the supernatural violates the predictability of reality.
If your dentist gives you a tablet for your toothache, this is science. If they extract the tooth or take an X-ray, this is science as well. If they tell you that the universe is not a creation of God, this is not science, but rather atheistic faith-based evangelism, and you need to know the difference.
Damn it. Okay. Let me start over. All right. Shadow said, "You're muted there, GE." Thank you. So basically, what he's saying here is that saying that there is no evidence to suggest that God created the universe or anything like that is atheistic evangelism. But really, it's just regurgitating information, right? You're just regurgitating the current state of our knowledge about the beginning of the universe, because we don't have any kind of actual evidence to suggest that God created the universe. So if regurgitating just basic information about our current state of knowledge is evangelism, then every school out there would be evangelistic. You're gonna this is just boiling down the word evangelism to mean any kind of communication of information, regardless of whether or not that information is correct. So evangelism at this point means any kind of communication of ideas.
Sir Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin, a medical breakthrough that has saved millions of lives. Atheists like to point to such breakthroughs and discoveries as evidence of a progressive world where God is no longer required. It needs to be noted that Fleming did not interpret his discovery as an argument for materialistic atheism. In fact, Fleming was of the conviction that it was the providence of God that was guiding his steps. There is no such thing as scientific atheism, Mrs. Johnson. Atheism is not science.
Okay, so I would agree. Atheism is not science. But then again, we're not saying that atheism is science, but there's also nothing like that's been scientifically proven to connect God to reality. I would say that the straw man argument that you're building here, because I don't really know anybody that makes this argument that science is the reason why we don't need God anymore. Maybe some people said it in the past, but I definitely don't think that science disproves God, or the fact that we can do science disproves God. That's not what I meant at the beginning with the supernatural, because I think God could still exist, but supernatural things just simply don't happen in this reality. That's a perfectly reasonable situation that could be true. So when that scientist was like, God was guiding my hand, that's just an anecdotal thing that he said, not some kind of proof that God was actually holding his hand. I know he wasn't saying that God was holding his hand, but it also doesn't mean that God is needed for science, or that in some kind of way the supernatural plays into our scientific endeavors. So he's trying to connect the whole atheism equals science thing to basically almost an appeal to authority, with, a lot of scientists in the past being Christians and still being able to do science. Drew's Book Review says, is he making up an argument so he can debunk it? That's what they normally do, isn't it?
For many, the word materialistic is conflated with the word scientific. In other words, materialists assume their faith-based philosophy to be in the domain of real science. However, insofar as science is an objective process of discovery, it must remain metaphysically neutral. We need to understand that as soon as a scientist asserts materialism to be the truth, they have stepped out of the realm of science and into the realm of metaphysical philosophy.
I mean, I disagree with this because, science can never hope to describe the supernatural. All science can do is describe the reality that we're in, right? So to say that, the materialist world is all that exists, or that matter is all that exists, there's no supernatural that exists, that's just stating our current set of knowledge. We know that this reality exists. We know that material things exist. We don't know whether or not the supernatural exists. And for all intents and purposes, we don't have any evidence, scientific or otherwise, to suggest that the supernatural does exist. So I don't think that science, presupposing that materialism is the only thing that exists in this reality, is really working its way into metaphysical philosophy. I think that it's just, this is what science describes, this is what we're dealing with. So science can never hope to describe any kind of supernatural event other than showing a breakdown in the natural order of reality, which then would ultimately render science useless. So I feel like he's trying to push the scientific claims or the science of the origins of the universe, the origins of life, and other things that play into religion. I think he's trying to push that into the realm of being a religion or being some kind of philosophical belief set, rather than it just being, the scientific information that we know.
The modern scientific revolution, which started as a renaissance in scientific knowledge, was begun by scientists who were devoted to the glory of God. Men such as Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, Kepler, Bacon, Pascal, and Faraday were instrumental in the rise of the scientific revolution. These great scientists did not see it as a departure from reason to invoke a grand architect in regard to the existence of the extraordinary, intricate mathematical structures and patterns in our universe. Neither did they see it as a departure from reason to invoke a lawgiver regarding the origin of the laws of physics, laws that gave rise to mechanisms and processes which in turn made life possible.
So you see here how he's conflating the fact that there are religious people in the past that are scientists that were influential in the past as far as scientific understanding goes now, and he's conflating that with the need for religion, in order for science to be a thing. You see this all the time with apologists. They constantly talk about how without religion there would be no science, because all of the scientific minds of the past have been religious. But the important thing to note here is that you can separate out the scientific research from the religious belief. Everything that they had covered in the past were separate from what they believed, as far as a God goes. But he's trying to conflate the two positions to make them seem a bit more intertwined than they actually are. Who's your buddy? Says, we should be using religious science. Everybody watching, let's pray so that we can banish the demons from GE's blood to cure his diabetes. Then Daniel M says, here's my super chat from earlier. Star Wars and Star Trek have nothing on Spaceballs. I agree. Definitely. Thank you so much, Daniel M. And who's your buddy?
Mrs. Johnson has told me that her true heroes are the people that do science. She has no time for people that believe in God or Christ. It may shock you, Mrs. Johnson, to discover that some of the greatest scientific contributions were made by scientists who also believed in God. So when an atheist points to the amazing breakthroughs in science as some kind of argument against faith in God, I totally miss the point. Mrs. Johnson, these giants of science invoked God. but for them it was not a departure from reason, but rather the grounding of reasoning itself.
Okay, so that last little bit there, I think that he is like he's trying to suggest that reason can only exist because God exists. And we've heard this before from like Sean McDowell and Frank Turek and all these apologists out there, right? We've heard about how reason only exists if God exists, and that just is a nonsensical argument. You can go and look on my channel for the Sean McDowell reason video, but yeah, just because these... Okay, so first let me clear something up. I don't think that religious people can't be scientific. I think that the two subjects should be separate. The times when the science mixes with the religion is when you get, dumb fucks like Ray Comfort and Ken Ham, right? They try to merge the two in order to suggest that one needs the other, right? Just because these guys were religious in the past and maybe they grounded like their belief in the natural world in God does not necessarily mean that you need God to do science, but also that if you don't believe in God, that doesn't mean that you're the only one that can do science. There are plenty of theistic science people out there, theistic scientists out there. So I would highly suggest nobody go and say, well, you can't do science and believe in God at the same time, which I don't really hear anybody making that, but, there could be some people out there that do make that. But I would say that the fact that we find natural processes for everything in this reality definitely starts disproving or adds on to the proof that any one specific definition of a God can exist or does exist. So I think that unless your definition is more of a deistic God, something that exists outside of this reality and doesn't, touch this reality, doesn't do anything in this reality, miracles and supernatural shit doesn't happen, stuff like that. I mean, if you're going to suggest that your God has real effects in reality, then I think that science is going to start disagreeing with you because of the fact that every time we have some supernatural event or something that religion says, oh, this was our God that did this, or this is the reason, like our God is the reason why this happened, you're not going to have a good time with science because science is definitely going to prove you wrong. The times when these people think that science agrees with their idea of what God is generally results in them having to twist information and misrepresent things in order to make it fit their narrative that they already believe in.
These great men understood that we live in a universe that is orderly and mathematical, a universe that we perceive through rational, logical minds. Mrs. Johnson, did you know that the very term scientist was first coined by the Anglican priest and leading theologian William Whewell? Atheists will often pride themselves on the scientific method, but will leave out the part that the father of the scientific method, Francis Bacon, was a devout Christian.
These things literally do not matter unless you have a straw atheist out there that is, simply is saying that, well, you can't be a scientist and believe in God at the same time. Obviously, that's wrong. But he's trying to make it out to be like, well, all of these other scientists, these great scientists that even created, the basic scientific method and all of these different things that science relies on now, they all believed in God. Okay, good for them. I don't care what they believed. All I care about is what we can prove with actual evidence.
They speak of the incredible scientific contributions of Sir Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientists of all time, and also a devout Christian, but will not embrace Newton's humility. Mrs. Johnson, at the end of the day, atheism is not humble, true, or beneficial in any way. It starts with an assumption about reality, based on personal prejudice and the lack of an experience, with the additional handicap of extraordinarily poor arguments, and then goes on to insist the world adopt its view as the means to open-mindedness and enlightenment. Hello?
So I think that I pretty much tuned out with that whole diatribe that he had, because he had up on the screen all these words, right? That I thought he was reading the quote or something, and so I'm sitting there trying to find where he's at in the quote, and I'm missing like in everything that he said.
Or beneficial in any way. It starts with an assumption about reality based on personal prejudice and the lack of an experience, with the additional handicap of extraordinarily poor arguments, and then goes on to insist the world adopt its view as the means to open-mindedness and enlightenment. Hello?
I'm sorry, I've got to replay that again. I still don't even understand what the fuck he's talking about. I'm only going to do it one more time.
Atheism is not humble, true, or beneficial in any way. It starts with an assumption about reality based on personal prejudice and the lack of an experience, with the additional handicap of extraordinarily poor arguments, and then goes on to insist the world adopt its view as the means to open-mindedness and enlightenment.
Okay, I think I got it. Basically, he's saying that atheism isn't true because it presumes materialism to be true. But in reality, all atheism is I don't believe a God to exist. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to accept materialism to be true. You can not accept materialism to be true and still consider there to be supernatural things that happen in reality. So I disagree that atheism requires the presumption of a materialistic world only. So I guess I just fundamentally disagree with his entire diatribe at this section. Also, just for reference in the future, if this guy were to ever see this video, please, if you're going to put words up on the screen, read the quote that or the words, right? Unless it's just like maybe a couple words or something like that. Actually read the quote. Instead, I mean, you're confusing me. I don't know if maybe I just have a simple brain or something. Let's see. His quote says right here, "With the atheists, I cut to the chase by asking them to skip the part about what they don't believe and tell me what they do believe. In short, I asked them, what is your worldview and philosophical position? And what is the evidence that your worldview and philosophical positions are true and truly reflective of reality? Oh, the look of horror on their faces." So, I get asking somebody this question, and I get that Christians or religious people would probably have like a succinct answer of just, oh, Christianity. But then you'd have to define, your specific kind of Christianity and then what you really think about things. Like, do you disagree with your pastor? So, I mean, I could see this being turned around on Christians just as easily as it could stump an atheist. If you were to ask me what's my worldview and philosophical position, I would probably just real quick say something like humanism, and then philosophical position. I really don't know how to answer that question because I mean I don't really have a single word or anything like that I strictly follow, right? As far as philosophically, if we want to discuss like philosophical questions, I mean, I could give you what I think about that. But like, I care about people in this world. I care about my son. I care about KC over there on the couch. I care about, my effect on others around me. So like, I don't know if that's really a worldview. I mean, I would say these are good questions to ask because I don't really think that anybody really asks, like, what is your worldview? Because I think even Christians wouldn't necessarily be able to give a succinct answer for, like, what is your worldview? I would love to know what you think about that. Do you have, like, a succinct way of describing your worldview in a complete way, or your philosophical position? I would think that you would need a little bit more evidence, for that. Or not evidence, but a little bit more of a specific question in order to answer some of those. So, anyways, let's see. There we go. Here we go.
Hello? Mrs. Johnson, you say that energy and matter are all that exists. I say, prove it. Prove that dumb, impersonal, mindless, and unguided energy and matter brought into existence finely tuned constants that emerged into a synchronized, harmonious solar system with Earth meticulously situated at the right distance from the Sun, ensuring a life-sustaining environment. Prove that energy and matter became conscious and started to think and reason. Prove that energy and matter accidentally formed our lungs and accidentally formed the oxygen in the environment to allow us to breathe.
So we actually do know where the oxygen came from billions of years ago, is the great oxygenation event that happened. Cyanobacteria, it started releasing all of this oxygen into the atmosphere, you know? So it's weird that he's asking for all of these things. And yeah, I know, I keep forgetting to unmute myself. I just... Casey, I want her to be able to hear the video, and so I have to play it loud for her and mute myself, so pardon me, I'm sorry. Anyways, so he's asking for proof of all these things, but like, our lungs didn't just form randomly, you know. We have evolutionary reasons why those things happen. We have, cosmic astronomy, like, I'm trying to think of the right word right here, like the planetary science. Like we know how solar systems form. We know how all these things formed, and he wants to make it out to be like the Earth was put here in a specific place, and then like, you know, it rotates around or it revolves around the sun and all this other stuff, and it's done so perfectly and it's all fine-tuned, when in reality we found other planets that are in their own Goldilocks zones. Our own Goldilocks zone is huge. I mean, we vary in distance between Earth and the sun on the order of about 1,000,000 miles, you know? So all of these things that are quote-unquote fine-tuned are not so much fine-tuned. To suggest that the Earth developed in some other way to where there wasn't oxygen, yeah, we wouldn't be here right now. But the fact that, you know, we are here is a testament that it can happen, and it has, and it can happen on in other places with a large enough data set. Being planets and systems, you can definitely find other planets in their Goldilocks zones. So he's expecting all of this like evidence of things popping into existence, when really he's describing his own like position. He thinks that the entire universe popped into existence out of nothing, but he solves it by just placing a God there. And I can't think of a better example of an ad hoc argument for the universe's existence than that. So it's not science or the naturalistic explanations of everything in this reality that has it popping into existence or randomly doing things. It's actually, you know, God and the theistic model, the Christian model, that has things popping into existence.
Prove that the food and water in our environment were accidental and unintended, and prove that our stomachs emerged accidentally to absorb those nutrients for no sufficient reason. Prove that energy and matter placed within us consciousness and moral intuition. Prove that energy and matter haphazardly and accidentally, for no purpose whatsoever, emerged into sentient people.
Well, I mean, we can explain how humans evolved, how our minds developed to be even more complex. No, I'm fine. To be even more complex, and that's how we get, you know, moral foundations. That's how we get this sense of self-awareness. I mean, we have explanations for all of these things. You don't want to accept those because it's unfathomable. I'm starting to sound like fucking Trump. You can't grasp the idea of these things coming about naturally. And the only way that people like this can think about reality is it popping into existence, because that's what he knows. He knows about how his Bible, or whatever theistic position he takes, has the universe popping into existence. Adam and Eve popped into existence. All the other animals popped into existence. The continents on the planet Earth popped into existence. Like, that's the only way that he can really understand reality. So he needs a naturalistic explanation as to how these things popped into reality.
Prove that energy existed forever, and then suddenly, for no apparent reason, became industrious and busy, forever existing, doing nothing, and then suddenly manufacturing the most outrageous and extraordinary things for no sufficient reason. Prove that dumb energy and matter randomly began to compose molecular information that haphazardly morphed into eyes, ears, brains, digestive systems, nervous systems, immune systems, skeletal systems, and various other organs.
Thank you, hon. We got Daniel M. who says, when did we say it was an accident? We formed to fit our environment. Yes, that's exactly what I was going to talk about. So to explain all of those things right there, those particular systems and the way that we evolve is we evolved to meet the conditions of our environment. We evolved in a way that would allow us to survive in our environment. It's not like a conscious evolution or a conscious choice, but he's thinking that like all of these systems have to like go from pure energy, like we had at the beginning of the universe, like pure energy directly to a brain, a stomach, and a dick. Like, he thinks that these things have to evolve or come into existence all at once because that's all that he really knows. I really don't think that it's his fault because it's pretty obvious he's been indoctrinated into thinking that naturalistic explanations cannot explain why humans developed, when we have explanations for why humans developed. We have explanations for how life developed. We have explanations for all of these things. He doesn't accept them because they don't match his preconceived notion of reality.
All working in harmony and synchronization to form a walking, talking, breathing person. What is the evidence for any of this, Mrs. Johnson? Energy can do anything you say? Give me proof. Where is the evidence? Prove that there was no mind orchestrating such wonders, no intelligence, no architectural orchestration behind its grand formation, no divine power. Prove that energy alone was sufficient. Demonstrate beyond all reasonable doubt that energy created the vast variety and diversity of all things.
So, a really good, simple example for how, energy can be transferred and used without any kind of supernatural or creator intention. Just think about the sun. The sun is a nuclear fusion reactor, right, that converts simpler elements into larger elements, and during that fusion gives off photons. These photons travel from the sun and take about 8 minutes in order to get to the Earth, to which it then hits the Earth and transfers the energy into heat energy wherever it hits. Some of it's reflected, and that's what we see, with our eyes, but then other parts of it is absorbed as heat. That heat transfer does a lot of different things in reality, like it can heat water, or we can collect it and we can collect the energy from the photons in solar panels, and we can store them. Like, we can do any number of things with the sunlight that hits the Earth, but the important thing is that this is a process that doesn't need a God in order for it to happen. We don't need a God to explain why chlorophyll in plants exist. We have evolutionary reasons why plants developed. He doesn't want to accept that complex things that happen can be understood purely naturalistically. We got a couple of super chats here. We got Bill Nicholson who says, it's not like we could evolve to not survive in the environment we exist in. Yes, I agree there, Bill. That just simply doesn't make sense. He wants to make it out to be like we just randomly assembled atoms and, each individual person was built or something like that. And it just all haphazardly happened. When in reality, it's non-random, it's for evolution, it's random mutations that are selected non-randomly, right? It's a non-random thing that we exist today. There are reasons behind it, right? That don't just primarily get chalked up to accident or haphazardness. We got Hoosier Buddy who says, hold on a second. Didn't his God exist for an eternity with nothing? Wouldn't that make his God dumb since there's nothing to know? Could very well be. If God is an eternal being, how long was God around before he decided to create the universe? Was this universe the only universe that he decided to create? Maybe he's got a whole plethora of universes out there and we're just this particular one that he's decided to fuck up lately. I don't know. Also, he talked about how a lot of the animals are like weird and dumb. I feel like that's kind of a self-burn because he's basically calling God like weird and dumb because he's making all these weird animals and they're made in dumb ways or something like that. I don't know. But I do know that he said that, like, why would nature create these weird ass animals? I don't know. What kind of fucking kink is your God into?
Prove your impersonal, atheistic God substitute. Don't try to explain energy and matter by invoking energy and matter. That makes no sense. That's the greatest non-explanation, Mrs. Johnson. Truth be told, you cannot prove or demonstrate any of this because you do not know. You do not know, and yet you conclude at the outset God's non-existence. You have a worldview based upon what you do not know, and have conflated agnosticism with atheism.
So, agnosticism is different than atheism, and I just know that I'm going to get somebody on here that's like, you don't know what you're talking about. So, agnosticism talks about what you know. Like he said, we don't know if a God exists or not. We don't know if supernatural things happen in this universe or not. The best thing that we can do is go with the most likely answer, and since every single thing that has happened in the past that was thought to be supernatural turned out to be some natural process that we just didn't understand, that means that anything now or in the future that would seem supernatural is most likely going to be natural. It's going to be a natural process that makes it happen. So, like, we know how things evolved here on Earth. All right? We can be Gnostic about that because we know evolution happened. But, like, we can be agnostic about the start of the universe. We don't know how that started precisely. But this is all about knowledge. Atheism is about what you believe. What do you believe? Do you believe in a God? If yes, then you're a theist. If no, I don't believe in a God, then you're an atheist. And I would say that those labels are really only useful to us for things and organisms and people that can really consider whether or not they believe in a God. So that's why I wouldn't consider like a rock an atheist. A lot of people like to boil down the definition of atheism to mean like rocks and inanimate objects. But I think that you need some kind of self-awareness or some ability in order to even ponder the question of whether or not a God exists in order for you to have like an answer to that. So he's conflating agnosticism and atheism in order to make it sound like they're at odds when they're really not. Also, it's okay not to know things. It's okay not to know how something developed or if there is a God or if there isn't a God. Those are perfectly fine positions to have.
I'm not interested in what you do not know or cannot know, or what you have not experienced. Should I shape my worldview upon your deficiencies, Mrs. Johnson? Should I adopt your particular kind of faith? I told Mrs. Johnson that if she were to gather every book ever written on a scientific subject, she would have at her disposal an incredible and vast amount of information. Yet, she would still not have the answer to any of the profound questions. She would not find in any of these books the answers to the questions of why the universe has these physical laws and not others, or why there is something rather than nothing. Nor would she discover why the universe goes to the bother of existing at all, or where the laws of physics came from, or who or what put them there, or why the universe seems perfectly suited for human beings, or why we are here.
Wait a second. So, like, you think this universe is perfectly tuned for us to live here? Like, 99.9% of the universe is unlivable for us. Like, I would say a good portion of the Earth is technically unlivable for us. Right? I mean, we have developed ways where we can survive in different environments, but that's us changing our environment in order for us to survive. That's a survival trait, right? I would also venture to bet that while maybe we don't know, like, how the universe started or why the laws of physics are the way they are, it's not like... So the laws of physics, we created the laws of physics, if you will. The descriptions of the physical manifestations that we experience in reality, right? The physical laws that we know, we develop because that's what we experience in reality. He's talking about the underlying physical properties of this reality, like who put them there. I feel like a lot of the things that he said here in this section is just begging the question, because he's saying, who put these things here? Who created these constants? Who did these things? I feel like that's a begging the question because you're already presupposing that there's got to be somebody or something that put those things there, right? It could have just been natural. That could have just been the very basic fabric of this reality, right? Who's to say that another reality or another universe out there, that another reality doesn't exist where these basic underlying laws of reality or physical characteristics of reality are different? Like, there's no way for you to know whether or not that exists, right? You don't know. It's perfectly reasonable to think that these constants could be changed and still a life arise. There's nothing to suggest that that can't happen. Just like there's nothing to suggest that God can't exist. I don't ever say that I know that God doesn't exist. I always say that I don't believe one to exist and that I don't know whether or not one exists, because I really don't think that we'll ever be able to figure that out. We got Ian McInnes saying, dropped in super late but wanted to show some love. Thank you, Ian. And we got Uhan Roderick. Can't be here tonight. Love you guys. Aw, man. Thank you, Uhan. I really appreciate you, man. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're being safe and you're washing your damn hands.
She would never learn if the universe has a purpose, and she would find no solution to the riddle of life. What's more, she wouldn't find any kind of evidence whatsoever that shows how impersonal laws came to produce consciousness, cognitive faculties of reason, and moral intuitions through blind, unguided, accidental, non-rational, entirely purposeless processes. If you would like to read more about our discussion, then I would encourage you to avail yourself of my latest book, A Letter to Mrs. Johnson, Dealing with Contemporary Atheism.
This is an ad for a book! He literally wrote a book straw-manning atheism by creating a straw atheist, and then he wrote a book as a letter to her arguing against contemporary atheism? I feel like I should get this book now and read it. No?
What do you want to pay for it for?
I don't know. I'm wondering...
Paid for worse. We've gone to the Creation Museum.
Yeah, we have gone to the Creation Museum. Let's see. Amazon. Letter to Mrs. Johnson. I don't know. Maybe he'll tell us in a second where to find it, because I couldn't... It's not on... It doesn't seem to be on Amazon. Let's see. Okay, that's it. Let's see. Paul A. Ross. Paul A. Ross. Paul Ross. Okay. Oh, wait. I found it. Hey, look, it's $0. Oh, on Kindle Unlimited, it's $0.
Oh, we have that.
Oh, do we? Or you can buy it for $2.
No thanks.
How many pages? It $2? It's 29 pages long. I could read that while I was on the shitter.
Oh my god.
Oh man! All right. So, oh yeah, I do, don't I? Hold on. We got Philip Lagerwall, who says, "Who are theists related to owls or something?" So apparently this, like, he's got 10 videos of this, and it's like just books, and it's just 29 pages long. Apparently, that's a long. When you think about it, 29 pages is a long ass fucking letter, right? Like, who's gonna get a 29-page letter in the mail and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna read this tonight"? Michelle says, "GE, please don't torture your wife with that book." Anyways, thank you, heathens, for joining tonight. I'm so sorry for all the technical difficulties. I will definitely get something worked out next time to where that's not going to happen. Okay, so hopefully we'll get that done next time. But for this time, I hope that you will smash that like button. Leave me a comment down below. What do you think about this guy's book? Or what do you think about his arguments in this particular section of his book? I would agree that science or atheism is not science. It's never claimed to be science. It will never be science. But creating a straw man atheist in order to write a letter to her and argue against these straw positions that they have, I really don't think that's going to work well for your particular argument. That's just me, though. Anyways, I hope you heathens enjoyed tonight. If you did, please do like I said before, leave a comment. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.